Yeah,
I'm recording. Hey everyone. So today is the 8th of January.
2021.
Yeah, and we're now 2 days away from, or rather 2 days after, the stupid coup.
Of the Donald Trump protests, rather, Donald Trump's followers and subjects,
Yeah,
right? Protesting in Washington D.C. and attempting to take over the Capitol building
yeah.
and failing.
Well, yeah, that was a hilarious failure. Um, it was a hilarious failure, and also a lot of Democrats made a huge deal of it, right? They're saying it's an insurrection. This is a coup. And I mean, it was let's not dismiss it so easily. It was definitely an attempted coup, but it was attempted coup by idiots.
So there's this very popular video about a lady complaining that she was just tear gassed, and she was interviewed by somebody in the mass media, I suppose, and
Uh huh.
she's like, I just got tear gassed, and it sucks, and this is a revolution. And Stephen Colbert had an interesting, funny um, comment on that. You know what happens to people in revolutions?
Yes. What?
They get their hands chopped, or rather,
That's
their heads chopped off.
well, yeah. Uh,
And she was there complaining that she got tear
She's
gassed.
like, I was just trying to have a revolution, and they're using tear gas on me. This is unconscionable. No, again, it's a stupid coup, and that's primarily because, much like anything else, I mean, we have an acquaintance who's very similar to Trump, and it's just like that. Everything at the end of the project, this is a person who has a lot of projects, and at the end of the project, it always unravels in a very similar way. And this is just Donald Trump's presidency unraveling in this way, and it's kind of like somebody said that they've been trying to do the slow motion coup for the last month, and the saving grace is that everybody in Trump's administration, including him himself, are incredibly incompetent. So as a result, would you really assume that his supporters who would attempt to do a coup on his behalf would be any more competent than that?
It's funny because, to answer your question, no, unfortunately, no. It's funny because it was planned, in air quotes, for months and months, right? And this is the best that they could do.
Well, they didn't see. I don't think anybody really planned this. I think let's put this event in the context. So, I mean, first of all, probably everybody listening to this podcast knows exactly what we're talking about. But if not, on January 6th, when Congress was joined in their joint session, so that's House of Representatives and senators, basically in one room voting. They're not voting; they're just reading the electoral college votes and
They're
one
counting it,
that counting them. Yeah,
and it's a formal ceremony of accepting the new president.
yeah, and basically every single election, there's somebody who objects. You know, during Trump's administration and during Obama's administration, there were several, and before that, during George Bush's administration, Democrats objected during this proceeding, but nobody took those people even remotely seriously. It was just it was just grandstanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
This time around, it was different because people were legitimately trying to. This was not just a grandstanding opportunity. They were legitimately trying to overturn the election and to give it to Donald Trump based on unspecified, unproven, and utterly lacking in evidence claims of fraud, right? And that those claims of fraud are utterly lacking in evidence. We know that from the fact that when a judge in Wisconsin, and anybody can look this up if you doubt me, I know it doesn't play on Anna or Newsmax or whatever the fuck network you're using, but again, public records, you can see it and you can see it on video. In Wisconsin, when a judge gave Donald Trump, or rather his lawyers, a chance to present their case, on the merits, not on technicalities and all this other stuff, but on the merits, his lawyers chose to stipulate to the facts, which means agree with the other side, rather than have to prove up their case. They could have presented all the evidence of all the improprieties and all of the problems with the election, and it would have delayed the certification of Wisconsin's votes, and would have actually given Donald Trump a chance on the 6th. But his lawyers, knowing that they can't lie in court the way they do during press conferences, chose to stipulate to the facts instead of presenting the case. The nice thing that's happening right now is actually that Cindy Powell, the woman who's running around claiming that Dominion voting machines through Venezuela gave the votes to somebody else.
Okay. What did she say?
She's being sued right now for $1.2 billion by Dominion voting machines, who said, "Oh, okay, you think our machines are fake? Go ahead, prove it. You wanted a trial on the merits. Let's have a trial on the merits. Go ahead. But if you fail to prove it, we want $1.2 billion in compensatory damages for the damage you caused to our company." All of a sudden, she's shitting in her pants because all of a sudden she doesn't just get to run around making accusations, right? Or filing claims that get dismissed because they're misspelled and they don't have the proper documentation with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But instead, now she has to actually defend herself. And to defend herself, she needs to prove up the case that she's been making in the media for the last 2 months, or for the last month, rather, right? So all of a sudden, she's fucked.
I wonder if the Trump administration will come to her saving grace.
Well, they can't. Well, how would they?
Give her money to do the research to buy her Dominion machine. And,
well, it's
and
fine.
Hire experts to.
Well,
help
no,
her.
she wouldn't need to buy a Dominion machine. They would during discovery process of this lawsuit, and Dominion would have to provide her all that information. So the point is, they are opening themselves up to discovery, right?
Yeah.
Which means that they have nothing to hide. Or, as a Donald Trump supporter would put, that means that they already have hidden everything that there is to hide.
What I find more disturbing, if slightly just kind of odd, is how everything that's happening right now is exactly what happens in in countries with dictators. This is how they win, how they corrupt elections, and how they create doubt in people's minds, and how they're able to seize power in those countries like Russia, Belarus, I don't know, all those countries in Africa.
Yeah. Well, the difference here is that the Congress has held everybody well, not everybody, except for the 6-7 idiots. So 7% of our country is more or less idiots, and apparently the other 92 to 93 senators have at least a semblance of decency and morality, and they voted to uphold Biden's election. And by the way, nobody gives a flying fuck. I'm sick and tired, by the way, of Donald Trump supporters keep screaming like, "How could it possibly be that Biden won? Nobody likes Biden. Go ahead, love your Biden. He's such an asshole." It's like, yeah, Biden's a fucking asshole. He's useless. He's useless, and he's a used car salesman as far as I'm concerned. He's such a politician. But the point is, this election wasn't about Biden. This election was about getting rid of Trump.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening, because he's dangerous and because he is unhinged lunatic.
I wonder if Donald Trump knows that he's dangerous. So, up to now, like, we've finally seen Donald Trump's true colors. Like, you cannot deny that how he behaved on Wednesday. Was it Wednesday?
Yeah. He was a coward. On Wednesday, he behaved like a coward.
He behaved very
But we knew
poorly.
that he was a coward.
But you can see it, because he did not address the nation when his supporters, or actually he did. He made a 1-minute pre-recorded video that said, "I love you guys. The election was stolen from us, but please go home and be peaceful."
Yeah,
Whatever,
he
right?
tried to calm them down. He tried to be peaceful, but he acted like a coward. Eventually, and again, this didn't play too much in the news, unfortunately, because They were busy, screaming about how much of a coup it was. But what they should have stressed more is when Donald Trump, for instance, took credit for deploying the military. It wasn't Donald Trump who deployed the military. He was in his fucking Oval Office sucking his thumb and in a fetal position at that time. It was actually Mike Pence who had to go above his head, above Donald Trump's head, and go in and give the order to deploy National Guard because National Guard was standing by, waiting for the order. As soon as this started happening, the National Guard in Virginia already packed. They were ready to go. They were ready to deploy, but they didn't have the order. They had to get the order from Commander in Chief. Our Commander in Chief was in the White House, locked in his office, sucking his thumb. So as a result, we had to rely on Mike Pence to do the job of the president and go in and call in the National Guard to disperse the people who stormed the Capitol building. Now, the people who stormed the Capitol building, I think it's important to know, um, let's not vilify those people. They're fundamentally not evil. They're fundamentally stupid. That's the problem.
And they really believe in their cause. I think that's important to remember.
Yeah.
You said that like 7% of the population in America is stupid or dumb or whatever. But that's true for any country. That's true for humanity itself. You will always find people who are easily
Well, remember the old George
convinced.
Carlin line, imagine how stupid the average person is, and then realize that half of them are dumber than that. But the fact of the matter is, these people, I'm not even sure if they're entirely stupid. I think these people are decent, normal, human beings who have been deranged by our president. These are people who are maybe not terribly sophisticated and as a result don't do their research particularly well. These are people who are maybe ruled more by their feelings than by their logic and their reason. And as a result, and they trust, that's the thing, they trust Donald Trump. They trust Donald Trump because he thinks, or they think that he stands for, the things that are important to them, right? And you can kind of see that in this again, stupid coup, because when they rushed the doors, they broke down the doors, but then they proceeded to walk back and forth between the two chambers of Congress, between the two velvet ropes. Very politely, they broke very few things. One guy stole the podium, you know, like you do.
But smiled at the camera.
Yeah, and he's a moron because he's already arrested. And basically everybody else who was there smiling for the camera will be arrested, which is kind of tragic because quite honestly, I don't even blame them for their actions. I do blame them for their actions, but primarily I blame Donald Trump for their actions, quite
And a
honestly.
lot of the Democrats actually want, to blame somebody, and they're blaming the Trump actually. And they've been so angry at Trump for not stopping this madness and
It
actually
was his people,
causing this
and he
madness.
should have stepped in and stopped it. Yes, he should
So
have been. He should have been there. Like instead of sitting out in his fucking White House, he should have been on those stairs telling people to go home. But instead, like a fucking pussy, he was sitting in the White House and not even answering phone calls.
yeah. And earlier in the day, he had promised that he would march with them. He
Hmm.
said, "I'm going to be there alongside with you, marching."
Yeah. And then just remember that, people, in a highly unlikely event that any Donald Trump supporter ever listens to this podcast, just remember, he said he will march with you. He was nowhere to be found. The man is a coward. You're supporting a coward, even if you believe in every single thing that he believes in. And there's nothing wrong with believing that America should be better. There's nothing wrong with believing that China has been using us, and they have, for their own purposes. There's nothing wrong with believing that we should have secure borders. There's nothing wrong with believing that we should have equality of opportunity and the outcomes will take care of themselves. All those are conservative points of view that you can maintain, and they're decent and they can be defended. They're defendable points of view. But this man is a coward. He's a fucking coward. He wasn't even there when his own people and his own supporters were doing something he literally told them hours earlier to do.
Yep. He will let lots of people die for him,
Yep.
but he will not
Yep.
die for you or
Yep.
anyone.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's actually a good line from Expense.
Yeah.
That this is the kind of man who will let you die for him, but he will never die for you. Ever. Ever. He will not cross a fucking street for you if it meant you would survive. So Just keep that in mind. So I have very little blame for the people who actually stormed the Capitol, primarily because while some of them were angry and rambunctious pieces of shit, which we saw, like the people who broke all the media equipment and stuff like that, majority of them were like literally like, I've never been in a Capitol building. Let's go take a look at there and protest and yell and disrupt their proceedings. I think that's what they really wanted to do. I don't think anybody first of all, I don't think anybody organized those proceedings. And second of all, I really don't think that anybody in that group was actually intending to like take Congress and, you know, and then what?
And that's how both Jack and I agree that this is a really bad coup.
Stupid coup, like
A
I said.
stupid coup. You do not go and have a coup without weapons. You
Or
do
without
not,
a plan.
or without a
Like
plan.
like okay, so we take the Capitol House, and then what? What's your plan? What's your step 2? What's your step 3? It seems like they're
And I think that shows a real lack of vision from Donald Trump.
well because his all of his plans, every single plan is like the plan of underpants gnomes. It's like step 1, collect underpants. Step 2, blank. Step 3, profit. That's the same thing with Trump. Step 1, declare war against China. Step 2, something. Step 3, make America great again. It's never really thought through. It's always like a leap of faith that he'll be able to do it.
Uh, that's true. And so he had no plan about what would be the outcome of this protest or this failed coup, other
Well,
than
I was gonna say more specifically because he doesn't calculate things in his forefront, like in his brain, but he calculates things in his lizard brain. And inside his lizard brain, the calculation was, I'm going to rile people up as much as I can, right to the point of them doing crazy things, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to push them that hard. So that way they're going to stick with me no matter what. And then once I leave the White House, and there are reports coming out that he knew all along that he was going to leave. He was lying. If you follow that man and if you believe in him, he was lying to you. And I don't know how to prove to you that he was lying to you because it's like proving to you that Jesus was the devil, if you believe in Jesus. And Jesus was not the devil, but
or
I'm
that
just
water
making a
is
point.
wet.
Well, no,
It's
it's like the
as abstract as that.
yeah, it's impossible to show this because you'll never believe it. But if you look at all the actual facts, the man was lying to you about so many things, and he was doing that on purpose because he's trying to do his. He wants to continue to be relevant after the
No,
election.
he was simply showing strength.
Yeah,
I suppose that's what he was showing. He
yeah,
was flexing his muscles.
yeah.
He's telling the Congress, "Oh, look at me! How strong am I? I can
Yeah.
rile all these
A good
people up."
analogy about that is I don't know if you've ever been to the bars, a bar, and there's like some stupid drunk guy in the bar who's like starts screaming, hold me back! I'm going to fight this guy!" And then nobody's like, okay, go ahead and just fight over there, so we don't have to get hurt. And all of a sudden this guy, okay, well now I don't want to fight anymore. Nobody's holding me back. That was exactly like Donald Trump. It's the same fucking thing. And his supporters that unfortunately a lot of them, and again, the people who stormed the White House, not the White House, the people who stormed the Capitol
Capitol
building,
building. Yeah.
they were not all they were not representative of all the Trump supporters. They were definitely fucking Trump supporters, by the way. All those rumors.
Soft-bellied,
Yeah,
middle-aged
yeah, they were
men,
all yeah.
white men and women.
Yeah, if anybody's claiming that those people are not Trump supporters, just fucking look at them. But what I'm saying is they're not. They don't represent 100% of all the people who voted for Donald Trump. In fact, they represent a tiny, tiny, tiny minority because they interviewed a lot of people, from the Midwest and stuff over there. And those people were like, yeah, we came here to support our president. We think it was stolen. We think there was fraud. But yeah, no, we're not going to go in the Capitol. That's weird. No, we can't do that. That's not right. Like even those people were like, no, that's not right. We shouldn't be doing that. So it's not like it represents all of his supporters. It just represents a small minority of people who are particularly easy to manipulate. And he's a very good manipulator of people.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate part. He's a very good manipulator.
And he blamed all those people who broke in and actually caused damage as being Antifa um,
Well, he didn't.
protesters.
Yeah, so he didn't say that, but a lot of Republicans said that. And this is the other thing that really hurts me. If you look online, it's so easy to manufacture evidence for you guys. Like if you are a Trump supporter, it's so easy to convince you you really need to do your research better. For instance, there was a guy that was dressed like a Viking that people were claiming, oh, he's an Antifa member. And then people showed a picture of this man at a BLM Black Lives Matter rally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except they cropped out the picture in such a way that you couldn't see what was written on his poster when he was at the BLM rally or where he was standing when he was at the BLM rally.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Ask yourself why that picture was cropped that way. And then look at the original picture, the actual picture that was taken, and you very clearly can see that the man was counter protesting. He's holding a sign that says, Q sent me, and he was with the Proud Boys screaming at the Black Lives Matter people. And there is video of this, video and photographs, and all you have to do is look. But all of you fucks will retweet the same stupid meme 1,000 times before you even bother to look once whether it's real or not. And it's the same thing I saw about the guy who was carrying out the podium. The guy who carried out the Speaker of the House podium, it smiled at the camera, that idiot. So they tracked him down, and then somebody posted a picture of him, and underneath posted another picture of I fucking kid you not. I fucking kid you not. An Excel spreadsheet that just has dates, his name, and some bullshit number that they made up next to it. And they're like, see, he's registered in Florida and he never voted once. How can you say he's a Donald Trump supporter? I'm like, how could you say that why would you believe a photograph that somebody manufactured on the internet of the information that we don't even track? We don't track who people voted for.
Yeah.
Like individually,
Right.
because that would
Yeah.
be an incredible violation of privacy. That information is simply not fucking available. And it's clearly entered in an Excel spreadsheet that then somebody took a snapshot, like a screenshot of. I mean, for fuck's sakes, but what kind of evidence do you... Oh, it's like if somebody accused you of a crime, somebody accused you of murder, and during your trial, they brought in a notepad that says, John Smith, assuming your name is John Smith, did it. That's all. Just like literally a yellow pad. John Smith did it. They showed it to the jury. It's like, you see, evidence, evidence.
I found this at the scene of the crime.
No, 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 no. That would be actual evidence. No, no, no. It's literally a notepad on which the lawyer just written, John Smith did the crime and showed it to. That's all. The jury actually saw him write it. Right? And then he just shows it to them. That's the equivalent of what we see on the internet. How fucking... It's like people who want to believe will just grasp at any piece of evidence that will allow them to believe what they want to believe.
This brings to mind two questions.
I'm sorry. Hold on to your question. I just want to say one more thing. The quality of the arguments that these are presenting are the same quality of the arguments that people who find the fucking Mother Teresa in a toast present.
Mm-hmm.
Every time there is some dude in Mexico who claims he found Mother Teresa in a toast that he made for breakfast, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Or those people who are like, oh my God, there's a Jesus in my pancake. It must be a holy pancake. This is the same thing. This is the same level of proof. Anyways. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You had 2 points.
If Black Lives Matters protesters are considered activists or whatever, would these Trump protesters for fair elections or whatever also be considered activism?
Yeah, I think them protesting outside the building of the White House, the Capitol building, I think that's perfectly normal. Even them protesting on the steps of the building, I would say, yeah. Even some of them calmly and collectedly walking into the chamber, and maybe even if they try to voice their Quite honestly, I would call all them protesters. People are.
Well, to draw attention to themselves by the main media, by the mass media, or whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't
With
like people say that they're insurrectionists or that that they should all be tried and executed. I'm like, no, most of this is,
It's America. We're allowed to voice opinions even if they're not
what
popular.
they did is what they did is they attacked something. They attacked the very heartland of America. It's basically like anybody who dismisses this, basically imagine that somebody just broke into your house, ran around your house for a couple of minutes, like picked up your shit, rearranged it, stole a few things that they thought were kind of cool, and then run out. Right? Like you wouldn't call that person a murderer or an insurrectionist or a traitor or a terrorist. You would call that person uh, a thief and an idiot, right? And some people just and then imagine that while the thief is stealing shit from you and running around your house, some other people like just calmly walk through, look around, and then calmly leave. Like those people who walk through and left, there's they are. I don't want to be mean to those people. I don't think what they did is the right thing, but I don't think anything criminal should happen to any criminal proceedings should go be
How
against
do you
those
think
people.
these protesters would have been more effective? Because, like the Black Lives Matters protesters, they were not very effective, in my opinion.
Oh no, these
That
people were utterly ineffective as well. Just like the BLM people literally ruined their own cause. These people literally like ruined their own cause. They destroyed Trump. Like if it wasn't for these people, well, Trump didn't have a chance in hell. For the sixth,
hmm
to get nominated as a president, but he could have still be a serious contender in the Republican Party.
But he was way too emotional and he let things go out of
He
hand.
let things go out of hand. Now he's gone. And now my prediction is that the Republican Party is not going to win another presidency for a really long time,
hmm
like years, like decades, like probably 2 decades. They're not going to have a presidency again, um, unless they play their cards right and something really bad happens to Trump in the next couple of years.
How do you think they could have been more effective? Again, should
Who?
they? The protesters, the Trump protesters, they were given, like you mentioned, they were given various opportunities to present their case. No one presented any credible case about fraud during elections
Okay,
in the
so
different states.
so if this is the problem, right?
And let me finish.
Go ahead.
And there was also a lot of ineffective strategy from the Democratic Party, who did not do their job by preparing a presentation or whatever the fuck they wanted, debunking all these allegations by the protesters,
Yes,
like you
and that
mentioned
was my
before.
point earlier. Yeah. So if I was if I was a Republican who was inclined to side with Donald Trump, and if I wanted to actually, and if I believed in this, that was fraud, which I don't, because I've looked at a lot of evidence, I've looked at a lot of court proceedings, that Donald Trump has, like court filings that he has filed, and there's no fucking evidence there. But let's say that what he was saying is real, right? Let's say it was real.
Mm-hmm.
If I was a competent legislator, what I would do is I would take my office, my secretaries and my assistants and shit like that, and I would task them with putting together evidence, real, credible evidence, on multiple points of fraud for each particular state. And then I would present those evidence in an unemotional, logical, and cohesive way during the argument portion of the January 6th. Now, each congressman or each senator gets about 5 minutes to speak. So, what I would do is I would then go to all of my colleagues who were inclined to agree with me, and I would tell them, hey, let's pick the best one out of us, and let's present this evidence as a group. So that way we have a nice 30 to 40-minute block of time to speak in which we can lay out our case to our colleagues. that would be persuasive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they should have done. This is what Donald Trump should have done if he actually had a case. He should have instructed his lawyers to put together a brief, detailed explanation of the best evidence and the best claims that they have those claims and have those evidence be presented during the hearings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why would that be a good idea? It would be a good idea because even if it would change nothing, it would at least show people that there are indeed evidence. There is indeed a case there, right? But the last time he was given this opportunity, he fucking chose to stipulate to the facts, which does not encourage me in thinking that there are any fucking facts in this situation that would lend credibility to his claims. And the same thing goes for the Democrats. The Democrats really are the ones who fucking blew it this time around, because they had they had the opportunity to do exactly the same thing. They had the opportunity to take every single case or every single claim that Donald Trump has made against various states and debunk them. But don't debunk them by saying, oh, this is debunked because it's been debunked by independent fact checkers, or it's been debunked by New York Times. No. Like, for instance, let's start with, what do you call it? Pennsylvania, right? In Pennsylvania, in one of the counties, Donald Trump repeatedly said that there was no water main break, that the water main break was faked. There was no water main break. This was all fake. There is actual video of water leaking from the ceiling and puddling into a nice pond in the middle of a room during the count, like at 5 a.m. in the morning, in the room where they were supposed to hold the elections.
Mm-hmm.
There's video of this. There's uninterrupted video from that point all the way to, the next day, essentially, right? Because they record everything 24/7. All of these videos are available and have been made available by Georgia, by Pennsylvania, by all of these different counties. I'm sorry, I may be confusing Georgia and Pennsylvania, but all these different states have made these evidence available. You just have to look at it. But the people who will post 1,000 times on social media that the water main break was fake didn't bother to look even once at the video that demonstrates it being real, right? Now, you can say, oh, well, they could have easily sabotaged. Yeah, they could have. But Donald Trump didn't claim that they sabotaged the water main. He claimed that there was no water main break, that there was no water, that there was no problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there, right then and there, you just proved with video, with evidence, that Donald Trump is a liar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then what next? What's next? You can move on to the next claim, and you show people. I think even
Well,
if
the outcome of the investigations that each state that was contested, you know, ran
yeah,
because Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, they did their own internal investigations, and somebody should have put together a PowerPoint, some kind of
yeah, but
presentation.
those internal investigations, people may not trust those internal investigations. So show them the evidence that came out of those investigations, not just the conclusions, but show them here. Look, this is where this guy is recanting. Donald Trump told you that they signed this many affidavits. Well, we had FBI contacted all these people, and guess how many of them recanted their affidavits? Most,
Yeah,
most,
yeah.
right? And then
So this becomes not just an emotional battle, it becomes a factual battle. And it's not just he told me this and that happened versus, this is what the evidence
yeah,
says.
and show it to the people, and show it to people who supported Donald Trump, and show them that they have been lied to. They have been lied to. They're emotional. They're outraged. They're really hurt because they really do feel that something was stolen from them. I was watching some weeks ago a man during one of the town halls meetings, like literally crying, like an adult man in his 60s, late 60s, maybe, or maybe like mid 60s, just just bawling his eyes out, crying, saying that he was stolen from and he doesn't know what to do. This is how emotional Donald Trump made his supporters. Like, they literally believe him, and they shouldn't, because the man is such a fucking liar. And I don't know how to show you that he's a liar. But he's being
Because he's
emotional.
pulling at their strings. But let's practice empathy.
But I am practicing it. I
Yeah,
feel bad for that
I
man who's crying his eyes out. I feel bad for him. I want to kill Trump, but I feel bad for the man who supports him who's crying there.
I think Donald Trump's supporters are often, you know, belittled, and we do not care about them. The mass media doesn't care about them, and nobody cares about them, and they're crying out for help. I think this is their way of saying, we need help,
They need a better
and they
leader.
need guidance.
They need a much better leader. I think Donald Trump has found himself a portion of our country who is kind of marginalized in many ways. And he has promised them a lot. He's delivered nothing. I mean, if you are one of the Donald Trump supporters, honestly ask yourself, especially if you're one of the Donald Trump supporters because you supported him because you lost your manufacturing job or because, industry left your town and your town has been deteriorating or something like that and you live in the Midwest, really honestly ask yourself, is your life better today than it was 4 years ago? My suspicion is no, or it's about the same or worse.
Right.
Probably worse, right? Like now you can say, "Oh, my life is worse before." Okay, forget it. Forget
Well,
about.
prices have gone up,
Well,
so
yeah. So, but somebody might say, "Well, my life is worse, but that's because of COVID, right?"
right.
And I don't think COVID is real. Not me, but the Donald Trump supporter that I'm imagining, the hypothetical one, right? So they'll be like, "No, Donald Trump is still great." Okay, rewind to 2019. Was your life really better in 2019 than it was in 2016? It wasn't. It wasn't that much better because he hasn't actually done anything. He actually, and you can blame the Democrats. You can scream that the reason why he hasn't done anything better is because the Democrats were holding him back and all this other shit. But and that was, in part at least true. But he doesn't have a plan. His plan is exactly like the coup. It's like he has step one figured out. He identified the problem. He identified many, many good problems, such as border control, immigration control. We can't have everybody in the world immigrate into the United States because it'll become a shithole. That's obvious. That's obvious to anybody, no matter how compassionate you are to people, no matter how much you love immigrants, right? We can't have everybody come to the United States.
Unless they're highly educated.
Well, no, even if they're highly educated, we need to leave the highly educated people in the countries where they're highly educated and were born in because they need to be highly educated in those countries, building up those countries. So I'm not, but we should be striving to make those countries better instead of blocking people from coming to Mexico, from Mexico to the United States, for instance, and then screaming, la 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 la, don't come to the United States. Fuck you. We should be saying, we should be talking to those people logically and saying to them, look, imagine if you have a house and it's a very nice house, right? And imagine you have a nice 3 bedroom house and you have one child and you're using your third bedroom as an exercise room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then your neighbors down the street have a tiny, tiny house and then they have like 10 people living in that house and they're really poor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And imagine if some of those people will decide, like, you know what, I'm going to illegally sneak into the rich house and live there. Clearly, they have enough room, right?
Right.
But imagine if all 10 of them come over. Even if you have a really nice house, you're still going to have 10 people living in a nice 3 bedroom house. It's still going to suck.
Yeah.
So that's not a solution. The solution is to go back and first be like, why do you have 10 people living in this house? Can we spread you out a little? And then the second solution would be, can we improve your house? So it's the same thing here. Can we make Mexico better so Mexicans don't have to run to the United States? Can we make Mexico so much better that we maybe later on can make a legitimate union between Mexico, United States, and Canada and do something like what the European Union did, but
North American.
for the North American continent? Can we, instead of shrinking the power of the United States in the world, because that's what Donald Trump has really done. Donald Trump has shrunk the power of the United States in the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because before we were a powerful nation, an American passport meant something. Passport meant something. Now we have no say in anything.
No, we can't tell people to be to have open democracies.
Yeah, we lost all moral high ground
Yeah.
now, and but anyways, let's come back to the things that Donald Trump identified properly. So he identified properly that we can't have everybody come over to the United States, but the solution to that is not to hate our neighbors to the
Or to
south
scapegoat
or to scapegoat them.
and tell and say that they're murderers and rapists or
Yeah.
whatever.
No, solution is to explain it logically, just like the way I had just now. We can't have everyone come over to the United States. Democrats love to argue and say, "Well, these immigrants they're doing jobs that Americans don't want to do." That's a bullshit. That's a bullshit argument. Not only is that a bullshit argument, that's an argument in favor of slavery, as far as I'm concerned. Because what you're saying is, this is a job that I'm not willing to do. I want to import somebody from another country who will be obligated to do this job because they're living under circumstances that are not entirely legal,
Right.
and they're getting paid less money, right? If you let the free market figure out the job situation in the fields, in the produce fields, and like all those field workers, right? Let the free market figure it out. Once we say no, you can only hire people who are legally allowed to work in the United States. All of a sudden, those jobs will be paying like $25 an hour, and all of a sudden there'll be a line out of the door of Americans who want to do those jobs.
For sure.
So
And a little bit more on that. I feel that times are changing. Times, we're in the beginning of a new century. Things are shifting. And in America, we have a crumbling infrastructure that needs to be addressed ASAP. Our
he
government,
did identify that as a problem as well. Did nothing about it for 4 years, but did identify that. Trump identified all the right problems.
right? We're we don't have a very high tech government.
We have an incredibly actually. If anybody looked at the hearings, you can just see how fucking awful our government is at actually doing their job.
Well, that's mostly because most of them are senior citizens.
Senile.
Senile.
Most of them are senile.
They're 60 plus.
Most of them are 70s, in their 70s nowadays, which is scary.
Right.
Not most of them, actually. That's not true, but a lot of them are. A lot of the leadership positions, people are really old in.
Our healthcare system sucks for most Americans, not for the privileged ones, of course. And our school system sucks. And there is a huge gap between the poor and the rich that has grown immense since the basically the last financial crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that have benefited from this from the stock market boom as of the last decade or more
Are the people who can own stocks. It's that
yeah.
simple. It's the people who and that's fine. Like it's important to say that we're not blaming the people for taking advantage of the system the way it is, but it is a system that is not stable. It's not a stable system because eventually what's going to happen is, well, Trump supporters right now, they're all about, oh no, we need equality of opportunity, not the equality of outcome, and we need capitalism, and we need free markets, and all this other stuff. That's all fine and great, but you have to remember, free markets have a tendency to create monopolies, and monopolies have a tendency to create zero-sum games for one winner and a bunch of losers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality of the free market. That's the reality of the free market that nobody told you probably about.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of free market that we have, which we don't actually have. We don't have a free market economics. Our market is highly regulated, which allows these monopolies to be created. In fact,
And over the last 10 years, there has been a trend for companies to consolidate, to merge with one another,
mm-hmm.
and to grow into even bigger monopolies.
Yeah.
And what is the government doing? Nothing.
Well, again,
Probably taking lobbyists' money.
they are, but you have to be also careful what the government can do about it. So we don't want necessarily the government to come in and start destroying those companies outright. What we want is the government to look very carefully at Like, I'll give you an example, for instance, of the GDPR, the General Data Protection regulations that they passed in Europe, right?
Mhm.
Those regulations make it much more difficult for a small time company to comply with them than for a big time company. And
Mhm.
that's true with a lot of our regulations. So again, you see, like, there's a lot of things that I would align with conservatives on. Like, for
And
instance, when you,
Democrats are so happy that now that Biden, is going to come into power, become president, they're probably going to pass some similar regulation to the GDPR.
yeah, but we don't need, see, the thing is, it's not like regulation is bad, because the people, the conservatives have sometimes a tendency to think that all regulation is bad. We want regulation. We want
To
to,
make sure that we take care of some externalities that nobody's
yeah,
thinking about.
yeah, exactly. That's what regulation is there for. The regulation is to keep companies um, acting
Accountable first.
accountable, fair, and honest. To
Yeah.
keep them honest. So when you sell a product that was manufactured, and in the process of manufacturing that, you created uh, 10 pounds of industrial waste.
Mhm.
You don't get to sell that product unless you include in the price the cost of disposing of that industrial waste.
Mhm.
And if you don't, that this is where the regulation comes in and tells you, no, you have to include in the price, or you have to account for the disposal, and you have to properly dispose of industrial waste.
Mhm.
The problem happens when those regulations become so burdensome, um, and so utterly arbitrary, like, and pointless,
Mhm.
that you start to look at it, and then you start to hate all regulations, right?
Mhm.
But regulations are important, but good, effective regulations are important. Um, but the problem with the regulations like GDPR, for instance, right? I'm only bringing that up because I know that better than many other regulations. Um, the problem with that one is it's so onerous on the small businesses, while doing so little to actually protect the consumer.
Other than to annoy you with accept cookies or not.
Yeah, that it's kind of stupid, and not only is it stupid, but see, the problem is, play people like Facebook and Twitter and well, Instagram is part of Facebook, but like Google, they have lawyers that will advise them on how to go around those
Regulations.
regulations easily.
Yeah.
But a small company, a small little startup, may not have all the technical know-how, and they're the ones who are going to get slammed for violating some kind of idiotic provision of that regulation. So that's what we have to really look at. We want to be able to build laws where it's we're still an open society that allows you to make money based on your effort. But I do believe that every subsequent zero to your net worth should be more difficult, not less difficult to add. So basically, it should be, in America, we want to strive towards America where it would be, given current valuation of money, it would be easy for somebody to become 100 in error, having $100,000. So it would be easy for somebody to have a net worth of 100,000, or to get to $100,000. It would be relatively easy for somebody to get to a net worth of $1 million, right?
Mhm.
And that would be a little bit harder to get to $10 million, and a little bit harder than that to get to $100 million. And then it should be really, really, really hard to get to $1 billion, and it should be incredibly hard to get to 10 billion, right?
Mhm.
But not for a company, or for a person, right?
Right.
Because that breeds competition,
Yeah.
and competition breeds efficiencies in the market, right? But so if you make it more difficult, it's kind of like, think about it like a video game, right? In a video game, every subsequent level is more difficult than the previous one.
Yeah.
But in a game of life, every subsequent level is actually easier than the previous one, because it's really, really hard to get out of the slums.
Because it's a snowball effect.
Exactly, it's a snowball effect. But
Yeah.
then later on, the richer you are, the more money wants to come to you,
Yeah.
right? But the poorer you are, the more money
Money
people
is
want to.
taken away from
Exactly,
you.
exactly. We want to reverse that. As long as we can reverse that, it's okay. If somebody is very lazy and doesn't do shit, they'll be poor. And if somebody is really industrious and really contributes to the world and creates a lot of value, they should be rich. But it should be people who are merely rich because they were born rich, or people shouldn't, we're not going to take that money away, but they shouldn't be easily given opportunities to become even richer
Right.
because they didn't deserve that money. I mean, deserve is a silly statement, I suppose. Uh,
They did nothing to earn that money.
well, even if
They
they
had to add value to that.
they have to add value.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long if somebody was born very rich, but then they add tremendous value to the world
Yeah.
and create a product that everybody wants, then by all means, they should be even richer,
Right.
right? I mean, that makes sense. But what I don't want is I don't want people to become richer simply because they have money in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
It's that whole usury thing. This is like in the Bible, for instance. For those of you who might be, right now screaming at your radio because you're saying this is communism. In the Bible, it says that a rich man should not become richer simply because he has money. Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the prohibition against interest was originally came from. Right,
Mm-hmm.
and they still have it in the Islamic tradition, and the Christians have kind of decided to get away from that. But the concept itself is very important.
Thanks to the Medici family.
Yes,
Yes,
and
of Italy.
we learned a lot about it. That's an interesting concept. But so let's round up to what we were talking about earlier, which is basically Donald Trump pointed out a lot of important issues with our country. But for fuck's sakes, the dude didn't provide any solutions. It's easy to just point out problems, right? I mean, anybody can point. I can sit here and point out problems all day long. I shouldn't be president because of it.
But a responsible adult also proposes solutions.
Yeah, and and it's okay to point out a problem and say, well, I don't have a solution yet. This is a problem. We should think of it we should think on the solution as a country, right?
Well, in a proper democracy, you discuss possible
Yeah,
solutions to this
exactly.
to this problem.
Exactly. The problem we have with Donald Trump is that he says, I see this as a problem and I have the perfect solution, except he doesn't. He only has the part one, but not part two,
Right.
right?
But his ego is too big.
Yeah, his ego is too big.
To let anyone involved in his decision making.
Yeah. Did we talk about on the podcast about the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No, we have not.
Okay, so I do believe that a lot of Donald Trump supporters suffer from an incredible amount of Dunning-Kruger effect, and so does Donald Trump himself. And again, this is something that anybody, including myself, can suffer from on case by case basis, so to speak.
So it's a spectrum.
Not only is it's a spectrum, but it's also it's like you can have a propensity for it.
Mhm.
Every single person out there, even the smartest people out there, has had an experience with Dunning-Kruger effect for like a moment in their life here and
Mhm.
there, right? But the people who suffer from it the most are the people who have a propensity for Dunning-Kruger.
Right. And that begins with I thought it was funny when you told me about the story because sometimes I have come out of exams thinking, "Oh, I did really well in that exam." Only later to find out that I did really shittily.
And I came out of every exam thinking, oh, I didn't do so well in this exam, and it would usually get 99%.
Yeah, and I've also come out of exams feeling the opposite, where like I did shittily in that exam, but then it turned out I did really well.
Yeah, it's because it's okay. So let's discuss the Dunning-Kruger effect and go from there. So the story that kind of gave birth to it is kind of hilarious. So I'll retell it really quickly. Unfortunately, I should really remember whether it happened in, I think it's Philadelphia, either Philadelphia or one of the other East Coast cities, where a man robbed two banks. When he robbed the banks, he wasn't wearing a mask. He had a gun, but he wasn't wearing a mask. He walked into the bank. He said it's a robbery. He asked for some money. They gave him the money. And then he walked out of the bank. And as he was walking out of the bank, he even looked directly into the camera and waved. He waved to the camera. And he walked out. And then later on, about 8 hours later, 8 hours after the initial bank heist, Cops have descended upon his residence, arrested him, and led him out. As he was being led out, and apparently this was shot on the news, as he was being led out, he kept screaming, "You couldn't have found me. I was wearing the juice." And
What's the juice?
well, we'll talk. Yeah. So eventually, during the interviews, because the cops arrested him, they put him in an interview room. They were interviewing him, and they were saying, "Hey, we have you dead to rights. Can you just fucking confess, and we can just get on our day? Like we have you on video." And the guy's like, "No, it's preposterous. You can't possibly have me on video." So because I was wearing the juice. And then the cops showed him the video of him waving to the camera. It's clear as day. There's no doubt about it. And the guy continued to insist that they couldn't have found him, that he was wearing the juice, and the juice was lemon juice. Basically, this dude found out that in kits, because back in the day, this is 70s, they would sell these invisible ink kits to children with like little feather pen and all this other stuff. And you could make invisible ink messages. So you would write a message and then you would heat up a piece of paper and the message would turn brown and then you could read it. But initially it would be transparent and you couldn't see it. So the man found out from reading some books that lemon juice is used as the main ingredient in invisible ink
Mm-hmm.
that's used to transmit messages. So his thought process was, oh, if it works for making ink invisible, it must make my face invisible too. So he squeezed out a few oranges and he rubbed it all over his face. I'm assuming that would kind of hurt his eyes, but whatever. And then he proceeded to rub the banks. Now, when he eventually went to trial, the judge wanted to investigate whether or not the man was insane. And they had a few psychiatrists interview him and stuff like that. And then they concluded that the man was not insane. He was in full sound mind. He was just incredibly stupid. Yes. And that was actually the conclusion of the case. The man was incredibly stupid. So then two researchers.
That's like child level reasoning.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
That's what I
so
mean by
that
stupid.
yeah.
Yeah. You know how like
Uh,
children don't really understand the world entirely, like their IQ is a little lower than
an
it will
adult
be
that has more
eventually.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. This man was an adult human being who just had a level of understanding of the world of a child.
Yeah.
And he went to jail for his crime, obviously. But subsequently to that, this prompted two researchers, Dunning and Kruger, to investigate this idea. Like, how can people be literally that dumb, essentially? And not so much
Convinced of
how
their
convinced.
own
Yeah,
cleverness or
exactly.
something.
And so what they did is, at that point in college, they did surveys where they collected information. They did these tests. They had college students at that point do these kind of fairly simple cognitive and grammatical tests. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
they had to like write a paragraph, read something, and then what do you call it? Like answer some logic questions. Basically, like IQ kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
plus a little bit of like general knowledge and grammar and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who scored the worst on those tests, the worst, were convinced beyond all doubt that they were definitely in a top percentile, like in the top third.
Oh, I see.
Meanwhile, the people, they basically asked them, like, are you in the top third? I forgot what the actual methodology was, but it was basically like, where do you place yourself? And people who scored the worst would universally place them in the highest rankings, in the top third. The people who scored the best on all those tests
Uh-huh.
thought that they must have missed something because the tests were too easy for them. Because the tests were, in fact, kind of easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the people who scored the best were like, it must be a trick. I'm probably average. probably about average. I must be missing something, right?
Yeah.
And it's the people who were the dumbest who were like, no, I'm a genius. I'm the king of the world. Everything I answered here, this is an incredibly tough test. Incredibly tough. And I scored amazing in it, better than anybody in history of the world. And just you know who that sounds like. You know exactly who that sounds like. So that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's when you know, and I think,
It happens a lot. I'm sorry to cut in.
uh-huh, go ahead.
It happens a lot to people who go on American Idol or who audition for American
Yes,
Idol,
yes.
who think they're amazing singers and the judges can simply not recognize their talent.
Yep. And I mean, they specifically and purposefully pick those people
Yeah.
for
For their
entertainment value.
personalities.
Well, no, for the entertainment value.
Yes.
But it is true. Like an American Idol, the people who are actually really, really good at singing, they're always nervous and they're trying to do their best. And the people who are suck at singing, they're like, no, I'm confident. I'm going to win this.
Yes.
It's those people. But so why does that happen though? Well, and how can it be that everybody suffers from this at one point or another? So it happens because you learn enough about a subject to think that you're right about what you're saying, but you don't know enough about the subject to know that you're actually wrong.
Ah, it's true for everything, I think, because I was just thinking about I watch a lot of the Great British Bake Off, and all the top bakers are also have a little bit of doubt or insecurity about their
Well, it's because that's the only way you
projects.
grow and become actually
Yeah,
good. It's
yeah,
the idiots who think that they know everything that
yeah, yeah.
don't need to learn anything,
Mhm.
right? But the idea is, okay, so let's take baking as an example, since you brought that up, right? If you're a beginning baker and you learn a few things, you learn a little bit about yeast, you learn a little bit about how to make sourdough bread, for instance. You learn a little bit about how to do icing and stuff like that. And then you can make like pretty decent, maybe like not pretty decent, but like kind of decent-ish cakes and
Mhm.
stuff, right? What can happen there, especially if you kind of are a person of, let's say, lower intelligence, that could be so difficult for you that once you master those skills, you might make the assumption that that's the entirety of the field, that there is nothing else to learn. Or if there is something to learn, it's very little, right?
Mhm.
So you might make an assumption that, like, oh, I can do X, Y, and Z, therefore I probably know 90% of everything there is to know about baking,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, another person can go into the baking profession, learn as much as you have, and then continue learning more, and then realize, you know what? There's a lot that I don't know about this profession. Maybe I know like 30%, 40%.
Right.
So in the mind of a person who's like intelligent and open to learning new things, um, they know that they're not an expert.
Right.
Or maybe if they are an expert, they know that they are an expert in a particular field of baking, for instance, right? But they know that there is so much to baking that
They have a growth mindset.
not only do
Yeah.
they have a growth mindset, but like just the horizon. It's like people of small horizons who suffer of Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yeah.
Because the horizon for the expert is so much broader. Like their mind, like every time they think about baking, goes into like a million different things. Like I haven't tried this, I haven't tried this, I haven't tried this, I haven't tried this, and then the Dunning-Kruger baker is like, well, I baked sourdough and I baked a loaf of bread and I baked rye bread. What other breads are there? I think I'm like 100% baker at this point. That's the problem, right? And everybody of us can be trapped in that. Like like me, sometimes maybe I'm learning a new like framework or something. And I'm like, ooh, woohoo! I know everything about this framework, and then I find like then there's like 20 or 30 more pages of like documentation that I haven't even read, and I find like a bunch more things that I can do or something like that. So everybody can suffer from that for a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Um, so there's nothing to be ashamed of if like you felt like that at some point in your life, and then you found out, oh, I was wrong. There's a lot more to learn about this than I thought, right? As long as when you recognize that, you're like, oh yeah, okay, well I'll just keep learning. That's fine. The problem is when people learn something and then they're like, I know everything there is to know about it, and there's nothing more. It's kind of like when Donald Trump walked out of the delegation with all the doctors right after the COVID-19 hit, like
Mhm.
last year,
Mhm.
at the beginning of last year, and he walked out and he's like, you know, I understand this better than the doctors. They even said, "Oh, you understand it very well. You understand it better than us." I'm like, only a really stupid person would sit in a room full of, you know, experts in their field and be like, yeah, I probably know better than they after listening to them for half an hour. Like half an hour ago, I had no idea what they were talking about, but now I probably understand it much better. Like only a very stupid person would say it, or a very arrogant person.
For sure.
So that's the Dunning-Kruger
Food
effect.
for thought.
Yeah, and that's food for thought for you
It's
for
something that we can all fall prey to
yeah.
at any point in time.
And I think that also kind of chimes in or interlocks with the what do you call it? This whole memification of the news and how easy it is to mislead certain people. Um, like if you find yourself being easily misled, and then later on you discover like, oh, that meme, I thought it meant one thing, but in reality it was bullshit, and it was easy to check that it was bullshit, right? If you have at least enough self-awareness to kind of recognize that, keep that around, keep that level of self-awareness around. And next time you see something that's, accusing Democrats of being lizard people, or accusing, the taking of the Capitol building the other day, that was all BLM members, right, with no proof whatsoever, or if the proof appears to be an Excel spreadsheet that somebody typed up,
Mhm.
right, you may not know, or rather, you as an individual may not know how to make an Excel spreadsheet, type things into it, and then take a screenshot. But at least make the leap of logic that there are other people in the world for whom it is trivial. It is truly a trivial task, as trivial as tying your shoes for somebody who has basic basic level of computer knowledge. And by basic level of computer knowledge, I mean a 60-year-old grandmother who has never touched a computer in her life can probably figure out how to do that in about an hour.
Mhm.
So when you see people, or I find it even more hilarious when people just like literally write something on a piece, on like text on a piece of, on a screen, and they just share it, and you just look at it and it's like, wow, that's text on a screen and a picture. I don't even know how to do that. That must have been done by a smart person. They must know how to the world works. Like, don't let yourself be misled so easily. Research what you are doing, and then you don't have to become a Democrat over this.
But
I
at the same time, you not every don't go to the other extreme either. Like that everything is easy. Everything that you see out there is easy and requires no knowledge or expertise.
No, no, of course, yeah, and at the same time, don't go into the extreme that everything around you is fake, right?
Yeah.
You have to use a level of judgment in both cases. But what I was gonna say in maybe a final note is, if with Donald Trump disappearing from consciousness, hopefully in the next couple of months, there are other good Republicans out there, and I'm going to try to highlight them. I haven't researched this guy, but I thought his speech uh, during the what did he call it? The
Electoral.
joint session, I
Yeah.
guess, or
Oh,
the argument of the joint session,
yeah.
um, in the electoral college
Votes. Voting.
voting, reading, or whatever,
Yeah.
um, was particularly good, and it was that Ben Sass. He's a senator from Nebraska, and I thought he did a pretty good speech. People made fun of him for it because it was a little sappy, but I thought it was a really good speech about coming together. He seems like a really legitimate, really solid individual. He's incredibly, conservative. He's pro-gun. He's pro-choice. He's pro-small business. He wants to also go. He also thinks that we should export far less from China. He wants to increase production in America. He wants to limit immigration. He really does align like with your views on many many different topics, and I do believe he's running for president in 2024, or he will be. And when he does, give men like that a chance. Look at other men who, they may, because just because somebody shares, just because I disagree with somebody, for instance, on for political reasons, like for instance, Ben Sass is pro-choice. I'm not. I'm pro-life. I'm the other way around. He's pro-life. I'm pro-choice. So he's against abortion. I think abortion should be given to women up to a certain age, up to a certain
Number of weeks.
number of weeks for the fetus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he also Ben Sass believes in, kind of having free market take care of everything. I believe that we need regulation. So we disagree on a lot of issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's a man of integrity and character. Why can't we elect men of integrity and character, not bitchy little whiny pussies like Donald Trump? Like,
Who are saber rattling all the
yeah,
time, but are never able to
yeah.
pull through.
Again, they're like those shitty little men in bars who keep screaming, "Hold me back, or I'm going to fight." And then when nobody's holding them back, there's nothing. It's all bark and no bite.
Yeah.
Pick men who are actually legit. And I don't know if Ben Sass is that. Maybe for all I know, he's an idiot. But um, he struck me as a man of morals, and I believe that there are other men of morals in the Republican Party who you can tie your wagon to and go with those men or women. Um, you don't need Donald Trump. You don't need Donald Trump to. You don't need to become a Democrat because Donald Trump is no longer in politics. And you don't need to become a Democrat out of shame of what Donald Trump did to America. We need a vibrant conservative community in this country because I strongly believe that the entirety of our country and the success of any nation depends on balance between those who will seek to unstoppably innovate, the Democrats, and move the society forward, and those who will seek to preserve the important lessons that we've learned from the previous generations and preserve the society the way it was, right? That's a struggle. That's a struggle that, unfortunately, because of the way human beings work, is the only way we can find balance is by having two opposing sides struggle one against the other, and we need two opposing sides. The way it looks to me right now, is in 2024, Donald Trump will run for president again.
Mm-hmm.
He will not run as a Republican because the Republican Party will not have him anymore. He will run as an independent.
Mm-hmm.
When he runs as an independent, he will split the Republican vote because most Republicans will not go for him again,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot will. And that means that in 2024, more likely than not, we're going to see a huge blowout for the Democrats. They're going to win
Probably, yeah.
again.
They're probably not running Biden again. Maybe they're running
It's going to be
Kamala
Harris. Yeah, it's going to be Harris
Yeah.
and somebody else. Biden is going to be like,
Too senile.
firmly in the grave by then, or
Yeah.
senile. So when that happens, though, and the Democrats win, and then they win again in 2028, and then they win again in 2032, and so on and so forth, you don't want to get stuck with only Democrats dictating how this country progresses forward, because we're going to become a fucking social justice warrior loony land with everybody chopping their dicks off and running around screaming that they're genderless. We don't want that. What we want is a reasonable balance between conservatives who preserve the values, the family values, the community values that we have, and liberals who will push us forward in terms of our progress as humanity. We need that balance. And it's your duty, if you're a Republican and if you're a Donald Trump supporter, it's your duty within the next 4 years to find and support reasonable, intelligent, honest people who support your points of view. Because reasonable, intelligent, and honest people who support your point of view will be able to be good advocates for your point of view. Because here's the thing, do you want to feel good? Do you want to feel the righteous anger at the Democrats and you want to feel good, or do you actually want to be effective? Donald Trump will make you feel good. But I believe men like Ben Sass or perhaps somebody else could actually achieve the goals some of the goals that you're shooting for. They're not gonna see. The thing is, he's not gonna promise you that he's gonna do everything. He's not gonna promise you that he's gonna build the wall within the first 100 days of his administration or some shit like that. First of all, he's not gonna promise you that he's gonna build the wall at all because the wall is a fucking idiotic idea. Again, even if you firmly believe that we need to secure the southern border, which I actually do, the wall is the stupidest fucking way to do that. There's so many other better ways of doing it. Watchtowers, AI technology, drones, all of those things are cheaper, easier to deploy, and better than a fucking wall that you can climb over. I can't even begin to explain how much I despise. Donald Trump offers easy solutions to complicated problems. Easy solutions to complicated problems are always, always very alluring, but they're never true. They will never result in what you actually want. They will not result in happy life for yourself, your children, and your children's children. And if we don't address the climate change, then on your deathbed, you'll regret it. As your children are fighting for survival, you will regret it. Believe, if you want to believe in something, believe in people who have reason. Believe in people who speak as if they have more than a fucking 100 IQ. Believe in people who can make a coherent sentence, unlike our president. Believe in people who are better than you. If you don't think you qualify to be a president of the United States, legitimately, without your ego, if you just somebody offered you a presidency tomorrow, if you think you would pass it down because you don't think you would be qualified, then why the fuck would you vote for somebody who's even worse than you in terms of being qualified? Yes, Donald Trump shares a lot with you. Yes, he shares a lot of values with you. Yes, he also eats KFC. Yes, he also likes McDonald's. Yes, he's also a fat piece of shit who needs to lose some weight. Yes. But we've all been there. I've been a fat piece of shit who needed to lose some weight. We've all been there, but we are not qualified to be president. A president or somebody in that position of power should be the best of us. Is Joe Biden the best of us? No. He's a fucking used car salesman loser. But at least he pretends to be better than most on TV. He can maintain the illusion of grandeur. He can maintain the illusion of being a gentleman. And that's better than not.
That is very important. And on that note, we'll say good night to everyone.
Good night. Vote for people who are better than you are.
Or who are at least very decent.
Have a good one.